All right. Hey, everybody. Sorry I've been MIA. I've been trying to get you guys all into groups. I am working through it. About halfway there, but we'll get there. This next panel are with some of my favorite people. The Chartmetric guys and girls will be joining me for a panel discussion about their 6-month report that comes out every 6 months, as you may guess. So without further ado, let me make sure I have everybody's name here. So without further ado, I would like to introduce everybody to the Chartmetric Keynote panel with Jason Hoven, Rutger Rosenberg, Michelle Ewan, and Shashank Chaudhary. Is everybody here?
Yep.
Hello.
Yes.
Hey, everybody.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, Christine. Hey, everybody.
So good to see everybody. How exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. You guys are the keynote session for the day and the last session of the day. So hopefully make this all count. So I guess we'll start off. Let's first of all, why don't you guys introduce yourself? So Jason, why don't you start first? Could you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about what you do at Chartmetric? And since you're starting, tell us what Chartmetric is. Everyone got a bit of a crash course. So less from the data side and from the everything else side.
Got you. Everyone in Asia and Europe, thanks for staying up for us. It looks like we're closing out the bar here. But Chartmetric is a company that, if you were there for Victor a little while ago, we collect data from streaming platforms, social media platforms, places like Wikipedia, Genius, any kind of platform that has kind of either both or one foot into kind of the music data scene. We're tracking over 2.8 million artists at any given point, but we also have a lot of playlists. We have city level data where you can look at a city if you want to kind of zero in on the audiences there, audience demographics to a certain degree. And yeah, our business is a web dashboard. We have a companion mobile app as well, but labels, indie artists, distributors, people in the branding or agency scene, all can pay a subscription, and then they can log on to Chartmetric and make hopefully smarter, faster business decisions. There's a lot of really awesome tools out there today, and I think one of the ways we try to differentiate is with a lot of data science techniques that we use. We have things like across platform performance ranking that kind of ranks all of our artists kind of dynamically day to day. Playlist journeys where you can kind of track songs through different playlists to look at different relationships between playlists. Those are just a couple of things, and we're working on a few more projects too to kind of make the product better. So I'm Jason. I'm based in New York. There's the rest of my team here for the keynote. We're super excited to be here. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for having us, Christine. My title is Content and Insights Manager. What that really means is we just try to make sense of it. So we make, we make a blog, we have a podcast, we make these 6-month annual reports, semi-annual reports that we do. And we also do special projects with some of our clients who have needs outside of kind of the regular Chartmetric interface. I will shut up now.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Michelle, how about you?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Michelle. I'm also based in New York, and like the rest of us. I am a business intelligence analyst with the Content and Insights team. Again, yeah, we just work with the team. The title doesn't mean as much, but yeah, we do a lot of analysis and research on data, both requests from customers and also for our blog and podcast. And I'm gonna keep it short, so I'm gonna pass it off to somebody else.
All right. What about Rutger? Why don't you give everybody a quick rundown of what you do at Chartmetric?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having us, by the way, Christine. So I'm the digital strategy lead, and like Michelle said, doesn't mean as much. The title doesn't mean as much. I basically do everything from data analysis to marketing stuff to analyzing internal KPIs to helping build out the report that we're going to talk about a little bit, and to work with customers' needs or special requests.
And last but not least, Shashank, can you tell me a bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, Christine. Hi, everyone. So I'm Shashank. I'm the data analyst at Chartmetric. And I do the backend sort of work where pulling queries, writing some small scripts, helping in building some dashboards. Like we work as a team together to build and to support this product. So that's us. That's us from Chartmetric.
Amazing. All right, guys. Well, that's a great way to start things out. So first of all, I would love to know, before we get into the report, tell me about your backgrounds. For example, Jason, Rucker, did you guys always want to work in data journalism? Did you always want to be a data scientist, or how did you guys get to the point where you guys are today? Why don't we start again with you, Jason?
Definitely not a data scientist. Let me just go ahead and clear that out, especially with this crowd. I tried that in grad school and realized that my brain does not work in such a fashion. But yeah, so I've been with Chartmetric since late 2017. The company itself started in 2016, so it's only a few years old. Before that, I was going to grad school. I was studying music business here in New York. And then at the time also took a little bit of like introduction to data science, for business managers, and learned like beginner Python, SQL, that kind of stuff. Got familiar with, AWS instances and stuff like that. But before that, I spent time in the military. I was in the United States Navy, and I was in cryptology as a field. Which honestly is not that different from what I do today. It's the same thing. It's looking at different data sources and trying to tell a story with it. And not literally just a story in a blog, but sometimes, to, a team like I do today, at a label or something like that. But, when I was in, it was, to, decision makers or policymakers, within the government. And before that, I was just a musician, singer, songwriter guy, bounce around LA. Those are my bohemian years, I'll say. No, I really didn't see a music and data thing for myself probably until I hit grad school, because I didn't realize how much of a sea change it was causing in the wider entertainment industry, not just the music industry at the time. And so I felt like, since I had a little bit of experience with that in the Navy, I figured why not put the passion and the experience together for it. So that was me.
Amazing. I love hearing that background. Great. I had no idea you were in the Navy. Amazing. Yeah. Shashank, what about you? What's your background?
So I come from an engineering background. I'm a mechanical engineer. I completed my MBA back in India. That's where I got into a little bit business insights. After working for 2 years, I came to the States. I completed my master's in data analytics from Columbia. And I started working with Chartmetric. I found a fusion where I like music, my love for music and for data. It both merged together. And that's how I'm working as a data analyst at Chartmetric right now. That's where you can say both passion and work came together.
Great. Amazing. All right. And Michelle, what about you?
Yeah, I studied psychology. I just graduated from NYU actually. I started at Chartmetric. Thanks. I started at Chartmetric as an intern about a year ago, and then transferred over to full-time recently. So to answer your question, no, I never thought that I would get into this, especially on the data side, but I just had an interest in music business towards the end of my degree, and a professor I knew told me about Chartmetric, and that's how I got here. So yeah, and it's been great. The others, and they're all super fantastic. So, and I've been learning a lot, but if that helps anyone watching, no, I did not think I'd be here at the very start.
Amazing. And Rutger, what about you?
Similar to Jason, I sort of started on the creative side, minus the defending our country and all. But so I started as an artist throughout high school and middle school and all that. Then I went to college and studied poetry and neuroscience, and I wanted to be a writer. Yeah, as one does, and is able to not do anything with. So I wanted to be a writer or something in the creative field. So after I graduated, I went back to music and when I was studying neuroscience, I was, analyzing data as I was doing studies and all that. So mixing all that together, you get this stew, and somehow on the other side of it, I ended up telling data stories in the music business.
I love that. Okay, before we get into the report, I want you to expand a bit more on that. So your background in writing, and then you've incorporated data into what was that process look? What did that process look like for you? How did you get to that point? At what point did you realize that was a thing you could even do?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think probably during grad school. So I went to the music business graduate program at NYU, as Jason did as well. I think that's where it all sort of came to a head, because I knew I wanted to do something in music tech, and I knew I had this sort of background in all these different aspects of it. And by happenstance, I just happened to come across this music data company, and it all sort of congealed in a way. So all that to say, don't give up on your dreams, or it all works out somehow, even if it might not be the direction you envisioned in the first place. So it was sort of accidental, but it all seemed to make sense eventually.
Great. Okay, so now we can move on to this big report that you guys put together. Michelle, why don't you tell me a bit about it? What is this report, and why do you guys put it together?
Yeah. Well, the report was actually the first thing I worked on when I joined Chartmetric. So I had the same questions you did then. But basically, yeah, we put the report together, I'd say, to help really make sense of the data. That's, I think, a big point is making sure that people can actually use it and have actionable insights rather than simply insights. And so the part one section is focused on streaming social media. And then we do kind of like a ranking of the top tracks or artists on each of the platforms. And then part two, so that stays constant, but then part two, we change it depending on kind of what would be most interesting at that period of time or for that half of the year. And so most recently, we focused back on trigger cities because that's a concept that we've been pushing a lot, and I think has started to pick up elsewhere as well. So we wanted to revisit and also refresh for people who are very interested in it and wanted to have updates.
Great. And I would love to know, what is the process like to put all of this together? I don't know who's best to answer that, but I would love to know, like, how do you start from, hey, we're going to put a report together, to, okay, now we have this beautiful interactive multiple page report. What's that process look like? How do you decide what's going to go in, what gets put on the cutting room floor, et cetera?
Should I tackle that one? Let me do that. So we've done 4 so far. The first one was actually a physical booklet, believe it or not. And we had those printed out, but then we turned to like a web-based version, just I guess partially because of COVID, but partially just because it was kind of easy for us to kind of disseminate. The process, the 6 month periods are like January to June, July to December. And so ideally, the way what's supposed to happen is like the month before the next period, like we start to discuss internally, just the 4 of us, like, hey, what are some topics we should start thinking about in terms of giving it a theme? And then, in terms, if you haven't seen the report, there's kind of like 2 parts to it. There's like this beginning part that repeats every kind of volume, if you will, where it looks at like the top 10 artists that are trending on TikTok or Spotify monthly listeners or Twitter followers in the previous 6 months. And so it's kind of like looking at trends that have just happened. So that repeats over the course of kind of the report. The new part is, which is like the second part, is kind of like a new theme. And like Michelle said, this one is trigger cities, because we first wrote about that concept in 2019 and it seemed to really resonate with a lot of people. So we thought, 2021, it's a good time to kind of refresh it. So we figured we'd kind of like take a harder kind of magnifying glass look at it this time and dissect it a little bit more. So that's how we decided on the theme. And then we start to kind of draw an outline and we all just start pitching in organically. I think our team is like small enough. I think we know each other well enough where, it's a bit fluid, if you will. Once we decide on an outline, we all just kind of pitch in where we know we can best pitch in. And we start, gathering the data and working with Shashank, and then Rucker and Michelle start hacking away at the draft. We start making the little infograms that you can see on the report where you can kind of click back and forth and look at different numbers and stats and things. And, over the course of it, we check each other's work. We try to kick the tires on it to make sure that the data is actually kind of cleaned and collected properly. For any of us that have worked with data before, it can be a very difficult thing to deal with in case collection is maybe erratic for a certain period of time, or some of the data just doesn't make sense because maybe your query is grouping that column by, it should be this column or what have you. I don't know if any of that made sense, but essentially ideally what happens is probably by the end of the first month of the new period, we can release the new issue. So that's at least what we try to aim for. And I think we accomplished that this most recent time, so.
All right, I think you've said it enough times now that we have to ask about it. First of all, I would love to let's talk about trigger cities, what they mean, why it was done. And then I've never actually got a chance to ask this before, but since Shashank is here, I want to know, can you give me a little bit about the algorithm that you put together to put that whole process together also? So let's start about what are trigger cities? Why have you guys been following it and talking about it for the last, 2 years at this point?
Yeah.
Who wants to take that? You want to take it?
Jason, you want to go ahead and take it?
Yeah, sure.
I can talk about data. I'll just give a brief background. So what the process and algorithms, what we use, it's not much. We basically use all our databases, whatever we have information, what Jason talked about, the cities, we track all these data. So one of our previous employees came up with this concept of trigger cities with Jason. We'll just give a brief overview. He has a better knowledge about it, has better hold to say. But the process comes together when we merge all these queries together, and different data, we try to explore the different cities where this artist might have influence. So I'll just speak, right? Jason, why don't you go ahead and explain the concept, and then I can take it.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, go ahead, Rucker.
Yeah, so as Shashank was mentioning, it was a concept that was really developed by our Chief Commercial Officer, Chaz Jenkins, and really fleshed out by Jason in a blog series that he did in 2019, I believe, a 3-part blog series. And basically what the concept of trigger cities starts off with the idea that because of digital music consumption, the world of music consumption is now borderless in a way that it hasn't been. So the minute you distribute your music to a DSP, theoretically, it can go global. So the idea is there are particular markets that are a bit more favorable to triggering algorithmic streaming effects. And a lot of these quote unquote trigger cities are located in Southeast Asia and Latin American markets. So the idea is the music consumption culture there is so, and just the volume is so big that it can really be beneficial for artists. And granted, this is not a way to try to game the streaming system. It's just, it's a change in mindset to think about where your audience is on a more global level, rather than, I'm from X hometown in Iowa, so that's where my audience should start. It's more about expanding your perspective to think, you know, maybe my audience is in Mexico City, which based on streaming consumption trends, a good portion probably is. So that's sort of the background of the concept.
All right. Well, that's a good summation. Now, um, someone said thank you very much for this answer. Fantastic. So great. I would love to know what was the math and science behind this. Don't need to go too in depth, but I would love to know how you came up with what data you wanted to use, and then also how you went about trying to explain it to people. I know it's a complex topic, and it's really interesting to see how you guys have kind of sliced and diced it to be able to show, to kind of zoom into different areas to use a small area to give a big picture, essentially. So, Shashank, do you think you could talk a bit about, first of all, just about the math behind it and the science behind it a bit, and then I would love to talk about how you actually have gone around and explained all of this to all your different stakeholders.
Sure. So what we do is essentially we go up these Southeast Asian cities. We try to see which the audience, what the people are listening to. So we try to find these linkages where if you go through a report, we have done an analysis on Southeast Asia for YouTube listeners. And we find that most of these countries, the listeners are coming from India. Most of them are dominated, but the percentages over there, the number of artists these people are listening to, it's not huge. The numbers are not that big. Like on India, the number of listeners, they are a big number, but the number of artists they are listening to, it's not that big. So when you filter out these countries where there are a huge number of artists, like the music, what they're listening to, the variety of music, what people are listening to, when you filter it out and you find a short list of countries, these Southeast Asian countries, which most essentially, I can say in short, like have a varied taste in music and they listen to a various number of artists. So these are the cities which we call, quote unquote, the trigger cities. And like we try to find these patterns based on running various short queries where we try to find number of listeners based on different platforms, Spotify, maybe it be YouTube or something like that. So that's how we came up with this trigger cities concept, and we wrote about it and trying to get to the artists where if they target these cities, probably they might have a better reach to the audience. They might have these viral YouTube videos where you can go, you can have a better reach with an audience who has probably more varied taste in music.
Great. Okay. So I guess when you guys put this report together, and also when you talk about trigger cities and all these different large scale music data questions that your companies are working to answer, how do you make that digestible for people that have no knowledge of data or haven't worked in it before? Michelle, maybe you could speak to this a bit. Like, how do you take a large overarching concept, a big report, something that's really data and math intensive, and turn that into something that a label executive is going to understand?
If anyone wants to chime in, because it's a big question and I'm thinking it through, but it's a good question though, and it's something that we do every day. But I'd say, essentially, I try to figure out really whether it's a blog audience or a record company or whoever it is, what they're actually interested in. And then try to distill it down to that. The data, the numbers, how to get there. That's what I'm doing. I'm figuring it out, and then trying to transfer that into terms. Also, I think it's important to realize that when you're talking to different people, what kind of language you're using, making sure that it's the language that they understand and that they're most comfortable with as well. Because I think with data as well, it can scare a lot of people because there are a lot of numbers going on. So that is my off the top of my head. Yeah.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
So over the iterations we've had, we've kind of learned to what Michelle was saying, like which audiences we're trying to satisfy, if you will. So for example, the 6-month report, most of it in the beginning was looking backwards, and still most of it is, but we found that was really only interesting to like analysts at like a label, or maybe a manager who is thinking like very long term, because it's kind of backward looking and you're being very analytical. We found that journalists, for example, that were in the music industry weren't too interested in the past. They're more interested in kind of like what's about to happen, because that's just kind of where their mind's at so many times. So that's why for this particular issue that we had like a predictive section where Shashank basically kind of like made a kind of like a linear regression. I think that's what it's called, right, Shashank? Linear regression, where he's kind of taking like a few artists that we found to have like a pretty steep slope in terms of like Spotify follower gain in the past 6 months, and just kind of extrapolated that out for the next 6 out to like July 2021. I don't think we've gotten cited by any press for that particular one yet, but that was kind of like what we were trying to speak to in that particular section. When it comes to the Trigger City stuff, or whatever other, in the last issue, it was Netflix syncs. That kind of the special theme is really more for like the ones who are like really into like thinking about this like at a pretty like deep level, like people who are really nerding out, and people who are really, because at the end of the day, that's kind of what we do. So we just want to share a part of us and hopefully make it entertaining enough so other people can understand it. But yeah, people who are thinking at like a Trigger City level, or talking about how Netflix syncs affect someone's like Instagram following. It could be a mix of any one of those people or groups that we just mentioned, but what we're trying to do is kind of show how, instead of looking at a bunch of spreadsheets or like SQL queries, that this is essentially the value you can get out of it, or this can affect the way you operate day to day, no matter if, what part of the industry you sit in. That's what we try to do. And yeah, I hope we're successful. I think people enjoy the report. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do, is just speak to different crowds with different parts of the report. I don't know if I answered the question though.
You did answer the question. I feel like I am biased because obviously I am a client at times as well. But yes, it is all very useful, and I do care about the Netflix syncs and Trigger Cities as much as your predictive models. So thanks for that, guys. I can't believe we're almost out of time already, but we do have time for questions at the end. But one question that I would love to ask to each one of you is, if you could get your hands on any piece of data, what would you love to have access to? Rutger, I'll start with you.
In the music context.
Music, media, entertainment.
Obviously Trump's finances.
I guess that's entertaining.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, just, where we are now, at least, whatever our customers' needs are, whatever they're looking at most, really helps inform what data we bring to the platform and what data stories we try to tell. So I guess that's my best soft answer for that.
All right, Michelle, what about you?
Definitely going to echo what Rutger just said. But also I think that, with the way we have Trigger Cities and music is really borderless. I really appreciate how we keep trying to onboard streaming platforms from around the world as well. And so that's something we've added Boomplay recently, and then that Line and Melon charts now. And I remember when I started at Chartmetric, I grew up in Asia. And so I was like, I really want to see these on here. And so that's happening now. And I think something that will continue to happen, and as we add from more areas. So I'm going to go with that.
Absolutely love that answer. Thinking about the rest of the world is really quite important. So that's a good answer. Shashank, what about you?
I just go with my team, what they said. It depends on the customer, also the customer use base, where it comes down to that, what the customer really wants. But getting insights into the artist, how they spend. Someone said like over here, Philip, I guess, that artist market spending and all that stuff. So insights into getting what artists really want spend, how they budget their spendings, and all that data might be interesting to pair up with how the followers and trends go on these social media and streaming platforms. So that might be something you can explore.
All right. And Jason, what about you?
I'll do a two-parter. I definitely in the same boat as Michelle, in the sense that I think, a lot of our customers are based in Europe and in North America, but I think really trying to reflect a global music space means, being able to cover some of the DSPs in Africa. We just onboarded Boomplay, which we're super excited about. Or it'd be cool to work with, a DSP or platform in like the Middle East or in South Asia. That'd be super, super awesome, because I just think it would really truly reflect the kind of environment that we're working in nowadays. But then the other part is if we're looking at like way into the future, like more strategic outlook kind of thing, different verticals. That'd be a super fun thing for us to get into. There's so many, whether it's gaming or podcasts or who knows what else, there's so many other kind of verticals that have a lot of data that's partially related to music, some more than others, but it would make a lot of sense for us to kind of move in that direction. And I'd love to see us kind of expand into a different kind of space. We're still focused on music, but it'd be really neat to kind of do that kind of thing one day.
Awesome. I know there's a lot of people in the chat right here that are very excited about Boomplay and would love to hear more about Africa. We cannot dive deep into that right now because we're almost out of time, but hopefully some of you guys can pop into our Slack channel and have a bit of a Q&A with some people commenting here. But I will close it out. Actually, you know what? We do have 10 more minutes after this, so we might be able to squeeze those in. So, yeah. But I have one more question with you guys before we get to our Q&A. What do you foresee is the future of the music industry? And this can be, take this in any way that you want. This can be about culture, diversity, COVID, D2C, gaming, crypto, anything. What do you think the music business is going to look like in the future? Let's go the other way around. Jason, let's start with you and we'll go the other way around.
Oh, snap. All right, I'll take the elephant in the room, COVID. I can't wait to kind of just see other people again. I definitely feel like, once everyone gets vaccinated up and, we can all go to shows again like we used to, there will be a huge resurgence. And I really hope people have kind of a reuniting of kind of that visceral experience. Don't get me wrong. I've actually really enjoyed virtual conferences like these. I think it almost creates really even better opportunities to meet people one-on-one and have a really good connection with someone, because sometimes it's easier to do it like on a Zoom-like call as opposed to like, everyone's a little sloshed at a bar somewhere and there's music playing and it's hard to hear people. But yeah, I really just look forward to, while I think we have a greater appreciation of things like live streaming and other digital forms of entertainment, I really hope that the live piece kind of comes back in and is something that we can hopefully be able to track on Chartmetric as well. But just from a human perspective, I'm just really looking forward to just doing that again.
And I completely agree with you there. Just completely. Shashank, what about you?
So I come from a tech background, sort of, and I honestly did not know that there's so much of data and music that's been going on in this industry. I honestly had no idea about 6 months back. But once I've gotten into it, I've got a lot of ideas which I look forward to. And looking at the music industry trends, like we have a lot of platforms which are coming up based alone on music, like TikTok, Spotify. These are huge companies which are coming up with. And the data, what they analyze and sort of what they pull, they get so much audience analytics, so much insights into their audience, like what they listen to, how they listen to. That's where I see this music industry growing, like artists all getting to know this knowledge from these streaming platforms, social media platforms, and using that power to engage with their audience where they find it insightful and where they can actually grow. We did not have this power probably 10 or 15 years back, but now seeing how music industry is developing into this using data, that's how I see it growing towards that, integrating data with music. That's what this conference.
Amazing. Okay. I see that as well. Hopefully that's the case because that's why we're all here. Michelle, what about you? What do you think is the future of the music business?
I think one of the things that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing is just how like different cultures of music mix and spread around the world. I feel like in many ways music is becoming increasingly genreless, which is interesting as well for on the data side, because how do we tag and like identify different songs and cultures and tracks? And so yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how that grows as well. And then on the other side, which is probably more tech related, how we listen to music, like how do we get to personalize it? How customized can it get on different streaming platforms, and kind of what or which platforms will rise to the top as well, because there are so many popping up around the world, and each offers its own kind of unique specifications according to what they think their audience wants. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that develops as well.
Great. I agree. The genre blending and the borderless world, the combination is really interesting to kind of see when you see, K-pop stars performing with hip hop stars, performing R&B stars. I think last week or 2 weeks ago, Bad Bunny was the biggest artist in the world. And what does that look like for the way the music industry changes? And Rutger, what about you? What do you see as the future of the music industry?
So I may be biased, but data analytics is relatively young in the music industry. And there have been a couple of companies that have toyed around with like the gamification of that data. So I know there's a startup called Fan Label that essentially launches a competition every week, and it allows users to bet on what songs will stream the most, essentially. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but I think the more that there's crossover with the gaming industry and the music industry, the more that gamification and the bigger that data analytics gets, the more that gamification is going to become a part of the music industry. And whether that takes the form of like a stock market for intellectual property where you can actually invest. I mean, you have Hypnosis investing in, huge song catalogs. I could see that happening coupled with gamification. I could see that happening on a more democratic scale. So you have listeners actually investing in the intellectual property that they want to see succeed.
I love that. And tomorrow we have a panel called Fans and Finances, and one of our speakers actually is a founder of a company that allows you to invest directly with artists. Because I also agree that's an interesting space. Figuring out how artists can be paid in different ways is something that is monumentally needed after seeing the effects of COVID for our artists that were heavy with live, for example. So I think that's a wonderful way to look to the future. With that, we have about 5 minutes. We have a couple of questions kind of flowing in here. And Rutger, you were nice enough to go through and answer all of these lovely people while you were talking, which is very impressive. So with that, is there anyone whose question wasn't answered that wants to speak up now? Or if anyone has a new question also, please feel free. Let's see, one person's asking about NFTs. Have you guys looked into that at all? Do you guys even know what NFTs are?
Yeah, non-fungible tokens.
Kitties, that's how I remember them.
Yeah, I don't know what to think about them. I mean, they could potentially introduce some amount of scarcity, but they could also be like a super niche novelty. I don't know. It remains to be seen how they're used on a large scale.
Right, that definitely makes sense. So I'm sure someone was having this exact same conversation about streams or MP3s or CDs, and they're like, I don't know, it seems like a fad. And then here we are.
True.
Great. Anyone else? We have about 5 minutes left. Anyone else have any questions? Anything you want to send over to these guys? No? See, I think you did too good of a job answering all these questions in the chat. Fantastic. Okay, guys. Well, with that, I will let you wonderful people go. Thank you again so much for the time. I'm hopefully this was inspiring and insightful to all of the participants in the chat right now. And with that, we'll close out the session.